Right, today's agenda is going to completely change because we are missing Ingo and Andre. Don't know where they are, probably stuck in Heathrow. They're definitely on the way because they tweeted that they were at the airport in Dresden at what, 5 o'clock this morning, or were they in Frankfurt by that stage? I don't know where they were. They're going to talk about, when they get here, we'll move them down the schedule. They're going to talk, they're from the intelligence group, who are one of the largest. Yes, I know. Are you going to phone some of these people? Intelligence are one of the largest SAP implementers in the world. A very large group based in Germany, but they've got offices all over the world, and they have CloudStack to underpin a lot of their services. Very interesting use case from those guys. Olivier is here. Where is Olivier hiding? There he is, from the XCP-NG project. Olivia is going to give us an update on the work they're doing, which is the new hypervisor on the blog, which is obviously of interest to us in the CloudStack world. Paul is going to give us an update on the CloudStack container service, which is an add-in to Apache CloudStack. Paul is actually going to speak first because those guys aren't there. Yeah. Adam, who also isn't here yet, is going to talk about Cloudian's plugin to CloudStack, which lets you bring their object storage solution into the CloudStack UI. We'll have a couple of breaks at some point, and then Andrea, where is he? There in the middle, from Hayek Data in Switzerland, is going to talk about their environment that they've been running for 5 years. So another sort of use case story. We're going to have to be completely play it by ear with this schedule because half the people who are meant to be speaking aren't here. One bit of feedback I got, I always ask for feedback on these groups. After the last one we had, somebody said it would be nice to have a bit more time where we can just chat to people and after somebody's talked or something. So I'm thinking today we'll have a couple of breaks at various points during the day, so we have a chance to sort of Q&A, discuss ideas with people and that sort of thing. And then at 5:30 or thereabouts, we'll all be going to the Paternoster, if you're interested, which is a pub across the road, to have a few drinks and talk about other things other than CloudStack. Okay, so just a few reminders from me, a bit of CloudStack news, a few things going on. Those of you who aren't used to coming to these events, this user group is one of many that happen around the world. This isn't an official thing, this isn't part of the Apache project. This is just a group of people who happen to be in London and the UK initially, got together and said, okay, well, let's do a user group around CloudStack. We've been doing this for 6 years or something like that. There are lots of other various meetup groups with different names and titles all across the world who are all focusing on CloudStack. In terms of what's been going on around CloudStack, we've had, I think since we last met 3 months ago, we just had one release, which is the 4.11.2 release, which is a maintenance LTS release. Paul was the release manager. Well done, Paul. Brilliant work. Actually, give Paul a round of applause. It's really hard work. Those of you who aren't in the mailing lists and follow the development of CloudStack, the release manager is a thankless task. Is that a fair enough way of describing it? Herding cats who are developers, who all want to do their own thing and all want their own PRs to be merged ahead of everybody else's. It turns sometimes into a bit of a political job of having to tell people they're going to have to wait and what have you. And it's a pretty intense process for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. And of course, with it being Apache, everything has to be done by consensus. So if anybody objects to the release, anybody -1s it, it's not going out. And I think we had five release candidates for this one, four or five, because there were certain people who weren't happy with different pieces that were going on. But so that's part of the 4.11 branch, which will be in long-term support for about another 18 months. 4.11.3 should be following it along, which will be another maintenance release, as will 4.12, which will be the next feature version with some new functionality in it. Best guess for 4.12 is probably Q1-ish next year at the moment. It's being discussed at the moment. Other things that have been going on. We had a conference in Montreal, in Canada, the annual CloudStack Collaboration Conference. So over 300 people turned up. We were part of Apache Con, so we co-locate it with Apache Con, so we have other projects doing their own thing there. We had 2 CloudStack tracks. Really, really good good event. I think we had about 50 different talks, 40, 50 different talks, a hackathon I'll talk about in a second. The keynote was done by Mike Tatowski. Some of you have probably met Mike before, he's been over here a few times. Mike's the current chair or VP of Apache CloudStack as a project. It's an official Apache thing that he ultimately chairs the entire project. Mike did a really interesting keynote, which is really well attended. I've just got a few, copied and pasted a few of the highlights of his keynote from his slide deck. Like I often do, Mike talked a lot about CloudStack adoption and made this point that with CloudStack, because we don't market the technology very well, because it's an Apache product, people think that there's only these, you know, they don't see it talked about very often as a project, but actually when you look at the real adoption figures, it's much, much bigger. It's like an iceberg. And in fact, Mike did pulled up some numbers. I've used these numbers, I think, at one of these groups before. Doug, they came from some analysis you did, and Mike used these same numbers as well. Have I shown these to this group before? Oh no, great, we can have a quiz. Right, you've got to guess what these three numbers are. So I'm completely copying Mike's keynote speech here, but anybody guess, what is the 219? Customers? Or known customers? Yeah, it's actually not customers, known users of Apache CloudStack. If you go to cloudstack.apache.org, the website, there are 219 organisations listed as using Apache CloudStack. And they are the people who have filled out the survey on the website and said we use Apache CloudStack. Okay? 116, well, nearly 117,000 and 20,000, 21,000.
Unique IPs installation.
You saw Mike's talk, didn't you? You're cheating. So we know of 219 users of CloudStack. There's 200 people have said, gone to the website and said, we're using your technology that you work so hard on. Doug did some analysis, because nobody had ever done this before. From the Apache download site, nobody had actually gone and said how many people are downloading our software. This is a bit dated because Mike's talk was September time, but I think it was just the 12 months before that, the management server packages were downloaded 117,000, just under 117,000 times across. There's downloads.cloudstack.org, and our company ShapeBlue have a download site which is not as big as the main one. So we combined that data together and got 116,796 from 21,000 different unique IPs. Okay? So that's where you get this tip of the iceberg perception issue from. Yeah, we've got 200 odd people who have publicly said they use CloudStack, and then we're seeing 21,000 organisations in a year downloading the management server and doing it. And they might all just be downloading it for fun. Yeah. Just doing a download for the sake of a download. And then there's some trends in terms of when those downloads are happening, and I think that cycle Mike talked about. Mike's talk is, you can get it on YouTube, I'll give you a link in a second. Talked about, you know, this could be around release cycles and that sort of thing, about why we're seeing the peaks. Mike also talked about the 4.11 release, which is, I'm not discussing that in detail here today because that's more than 3 months ago. I've already talked about that. But 4.11 was quite a big release. It's an LTS release and had a lot of new functionality in, new host state J framework, the connector which enables the Cloudian stuff that they're going to be talking about later, layer 2 networking at long last, and Prometheus integration, etc. And then the other thing that happened in 4.11 was a lot of work started to go into improving the performance of the virtual router, or router, depending on which side of the Atlantic you're from. And this is mainly around restart and rebuild times of the virtual router. One of the pain points with CloudStack we all know is upgrading it. And upgrading CloudStack is not that complicated. Upgrading the virtual router infrastructure is a pain, right? We all know it. Now, anybody here not agree with that comment? Anybody thinks it's very easy to upgrade? No, it's not. It's paid. And that's mainly around the length of time it takes to rebuild virtual routers and bring them back up. So there's a lot of work been going in since 4.11 to improving those performances. And there's a whole movement of people talking about zero downtime upgrades, getting towards having no downtime when you upgrade CloudStack. It's a long way to go yet. But if you look here at these benchmarks, this is comparing 4.9.3 with 4.11.1, just picking, for example, rebuilding and restarting a virtual router on VMware 5.5, sort of 2 minutes typically. Now with 4.11 it's down to, well, the fastest there, 12 seconds. A lot of work going on to sort of refactor a lot of the code about how that happens. And there's a lot of other work to come on that, moving towards the concept of ultimately you don't have any downtime when you upgrade CloudStack. So part of that was most of what Mike talked about. This is just simply a list of the other talks that were at the conference. I'm not going to favourite any of them, but you just get an idea. There was lots of people with lots of different things were being talked about. Some of the people in this room did talks, and some really interesting stuff, some really great work going on. I would recommend, those of you in this room who haven't been to one before, to try and get along to one of those conferences. I'll tell you when the next one is in a second. Get along to them. This is a very small group. We have 5 talks, and we all go to the pub afterwards and what have you. This is 3 days of a proper conference. People working together, people, a lot more talks, a lot more detail, and people also all being in the same city, staying over, having time to sit and do some work together and that sort of thing. So that's why it's called the collaboration conference. There was also, on the final day, a hackathon. Hackathon, those of you who don't know, is where just a load of developers or people in an open source project get together and hack and do stuff, just come up with ideas. There were 40-odd people, 40-odd engineers sat in the room in Montreal. They covered a huge range of subjects. There's no official agenda to this. It's just what people want to talk about, ideas. And in fact, I think Mike wrote them all down on the board, and somebody made a note of them. These were all the different subjects they covered. So sort of broke into different groups, people focusing on things they're interested in. Loads of different really interesting conversations. Just a chance for people to get together, share ideas, that sort of thing. From specific things, but being able to easily get information out of the secondary storage virtual machine. That's something that somebody thought they would be a good idea. So some people spent some time working on that. To IPv6, sorting out IPv6 thing, which is something that's gone on and on and on with CloudStack that still needs some work. So a bunch of people spent some time working and figuring out a load of the issues around that. One thing that's really interesting about it, it's not about the specific subjects, but the one I've highlighted there, unifying regions into a consolidated pane of glass. I'm not saying I'm particularly interested in that subject, but the reason I've highlighted it, I don't know his name, and I haven't got a picture of him, but a guy from Japan who nobody knew, sorry, that's my representation of a guy that nobody knew, came to this conference, nobody knew his name, nobody really knew his company, showed up at this conference, came along to the hackathon, and sat down and said, I want to talk about unifying CloudStack regions into a single pane of glass. Nobody had heard of him. Everybody went, okay, let's put it on the list. And it got discussed, it got talked about, and ideas that you guys spent some time with this guy got talked about, and there's some ideas coming out of that. And the reason I wanted to just highlight that is any of you could turn up to any of these with things you're interested in, maybe directions you'd like to see CloudStack go in, and you can be listened to and taken seriously. Okay? So basically what I'm doing here is encouraging everybody to get along to next year's conference. I'll share these slides, or Steve will share these slides afterwards. There's a link to all the videos. I think most of the talks there were video, not 100% of them, there's a few missing. And there was some fun had as well in the evenings involving watching, who was it, the Canadians versus, somebody help me? Toronto Maple Leafs, which was all very good and fun. Upcoming events. Right, I'm trying to talk you into coming to a CloudStack conference. I can see some people thinking about it. Would this change your mind? Oh, that's where the next one is. So the dates are not finalised yet, but around that time, because we're co-locating it again, early mid-September, the Flamingo Hotel, Las Vegas. Okay, that's where the next CloudStack conference is going to be next year. Should be 3-4 days. We don't know. It's still in planning, but the facilities booked, the rooms are booked. It's just a question of how we slot it in with other conferences and things that are going on. Okay. There's a website, cloudstackcolab.org, which you can find all that information as it becomes available. And I'll just go back to my previous slide. The next one of these groups is going to be at Ticketmaster. The guys from Ticketmaster here? No, not yet. They're on their way. So very kindly, thank you to the guys from Ticketmaster who aren't yet here, are hosting us March the 14th for another one of these. Ticketmaster's just up near between King's Cross and Islington. Very cool office to go and hang out at. They have a slide and a nightclub in their basement, which hopefully they'll let us use after our meetup. Okay, right, these aren't the next speakers because the next speakers aren't here. I was going to do a joke about Andre being the face of the Shanghai Marathon, which he was. He'll tell you all about it himself when he arrives. So Paul is going to come and give us an update on the CloudStack container service. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, good. Well, we'll give you a round of applause.